Hello, everybody, and welcome to week 4. I thought I would do a video like this this time. Instead of warming up with a kind of vocabulary session as we have been doing, I thought we would warm up by having a look at a video which you can see to my left. This video was recorded in February 2020, so it was after the general election in Britain, and it is a speech by the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. And one of the things that I think is interesting about this particular speech by Boris Johnson is, as you will see, what he says is very, very similar to the article that we looked at last week. If you remember, the article that we looked at last week was written in the Daily Telegraph, which is a more right-wing newspaper, and it spoke a lot about the idea of Britain as a maritime nation and the idea of Brexit as returning to some of those ideas, the idea maybe even of empire. So I think it's interesting, regardless whether one agrees with this idea, to see how current British politics is being framed, especially by the Prime Minister. So what I will do is I will play the video now. As I will do, I will bring up I will put this up here, my video down here, and bring up the worksheet. So this is the worksheet for this week. Put it over here. Hopefully you should be able to see all of this now. So we'll have a video here. I'll remain down here, and then on the right hand side we will have the questions. So to begin with, there will be I think we're going to go to, there are 6 questions before we look at something else. These questions vary in difficulty, and I'll go through them first before I put the video on. Of course, you can play the video more than once in order to try and answer these. So, the first question: at 20 seconds, the PM, so the Prime Minister, invites the audience to do something. So, what does the PM invite the audience to do? Number 2. I'd like you to try and place the following names in the correct order. So we have Thornhill, Vatican, Greenwich, and Michelangelo. Out of those, we probably maybe know Michelangelo and the Vatican. The Vatican being the city of the Pope inside Rome, and Michelangelo being the famous painter that painted the Sistine Chapel, which is in the Vatican. As you will see, there is a reference to this in the video. Greenwich is in the, even though it looks like it should be pronounced Greenwich, it is pronounced Greenwich, Greenwich, and this is in the far east, actually, of London, and it is a place which is very famous, actually, for its naval academy. So you might have heard of Greenwich Mean Time, the GMT, which is the time of Britain. This time is where, ironically, well, not ironically, kind of connected to the British Empire, where time is at 0. So you can see at Greenwich, you can see where the time zones split. So that's Greenwich. Thornhill, as we'll say, also is a painter. and I'll bring up a little bit about him later. But so there you go. You need to. Boris Johnson actually says this phrase, so I'd like you to put them in the right place. Number 3, I'd like you to try and summarise Thornhill's story as told by Boris Johnson. So Thornhill's story about the painter. So what happened to the painter as told by Johnson. Number 4, at about a minute of 47 seconds, a date is mentioned. So when you play, you can try and listen to that. And if you could transcribe the correct date here, so put the date in there. So 4B, what does it correspond to? So what is this painting, as you'll see that he was talking about corresponding, what does it celebrate according to Johnson? And C, what are the characteristics of that particular moment in British history? So Johnson talks about a particular moment in history. So what are the characteristics of that particular moment? Number 5, between about 1 minute 47 to 2 minutes 20, what other historical event is mentioned, and is it named? So what event is spoken about by Boris Johnson, but the question is it named? So is there a comparison going on? Number 6, what could it mean for the future of the UK, according to the PM? So what could this event mean for the future of the UK, according to the Prime Minister? Okay, so this will be online as well, so you can have it separately. But I'll play the video now only once and stop there, so that because you can watch it a couple of times. I'm not going to put it on a couple of times, but you can go back and look at it. Okay, so let's start the video.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you very much. Well, welcome. Good morning. Good morning. Well, welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming to Greenwich. And I invite you, first of all, to do what I'm sure we've done before, to raise your eyes to the heavens, because the Vatican has Michelangelo, Greenwich has Thornhill, who spent 20 years flat on his back on top of scaffolding, so rigid that his arm became permanently wonky. And he's left us this gorgeous and slightly bonkers symbolic scene that captures the spirit of the United Kingdom in the early 18th century. This painting above you was started in 1707, the very year when the Union of Scotland was agreed, and does it not speak of supreme national self-confidence? Look at these well-fed nymphs and cupids and what have you. They are not just celebrating the triumph of liberty and peace over tyranny, the official title of the scene. This is the settlement of a long and divisive political question about who gets to sit on the throne of England, and it is visibly resolved, as you can see, in favour of William and Mary, and the result is stability and certainty and optimism and an explosion of global trade propelled by new maritime technology. And this is it. This is the newly forged United Kingdom on the slipway. This is the moment when it all took off, and you know where this is going today. If we get it right, if we have the courage to follow the instincts and the instructions of the British people, this can be another such moment on the launching pad, because once again, we have settled a long-running question of sovereign authority. We have ended a debate that has run for 3.5 years, some would say 47 years. I won't even mention the name of the controversy, except to say that it begins with B and it's receding in the past behind us. We have the opportunity. We have the newly recaptured powers. We know where we want to go. And that is out into the world. And today, in Geneva, our ambassador, Julian Braithwaite, moves seats in the World Trade Organization and takes back control of our tariff schedules, an event that itself deserves to be immortalized in oil. This country is leaving its chrysalis. We are re-emerging after decades of hibernation as a campaigner for global free trade. And frankly, it is not a moment too soon.
Okay, so as I said, I'm actually going to pause the video now and give you the time to go through that a couple of times to try and answer these questions. As you saw, I also highlighted the questions as we were going through to give you an indication of kind of at what moment in the video you should look to for those answers. So I'm going to pause the video now and let you try and do that. I hope you've managed to look through those questions and answer them. Quickly now we'll have a look at the painting in Greenwich in the Royal Navy Academy that Johnson was mentioning. Here on the left you can see this painting. Johnson gives a particular description of this painting and he talks about the ideas in it. In particular, he talks about the painter Thornhill, who it must be said was very well known at a particular time, but now is less known. Obviously, not as well known as Michelangelo. He's most famous for this painting, or the painting of this hall. So it's more than just this part. I'd like you now to have a look at this painting, and similar maybe to the exercise that we did last week, which was a description of the imperial, the British Federation of the British Empire. It was a map of the British Empire. I'd like us to look at this, which is more, I would say, more allegorical than last week. Which, I mean, it did have allegory insofar as it had Britannia at the bottom, but this one is far more we could call neoclassical. It is neoclassical because it is using the mythology of the classical period, so of Greek and Roman mythology, to describe the present. So if we go back also to the video, or if you go back to the video, this will help you describe what or who are in the painting. Bear in mind, in particular, the central part here. I'll put with my mouse. So the central part here of a king and a queen, and then they're surrounded by different figures. If you could try and describe, using the video, what Johnson says this video represents, and that would be number A. Number B, using elements from both the speech and this picture, identify the ideas and comparisons developed by Johnson in his speech. In your opinion, what is the purpose, goal of this particular speech? So Johnson talks about a particular idea, kind of a political idea, in relation to this picture. So how is he using this picture within his speech? So what comparison is he making? So those are the two things that I'd like you to try and have an attempt at doing now. Thank you. I hope that you managed to give a description of that painting in relation to what Boris Johnson was saying, the current Prime Minister of Britain. What I'd like to turn to now, actually, is I think very interesting. It's a piece of. I'd like to do a piece of written comprehension. So there will be a text and some questions. This time, however, the The text is not an article, but it actually comes from a fairly new novel written by Jonathan Coe. You can see the novel up here on the Wikipedia page, called Middle England, written in 2018. 2018. What this novel does is depict the events, as you can see, the major events taking place before, during, and after the Brexit referendum. So, what I think this does rather well as a novel is it depicts the beginnings, actually, I think maybe slightly better, the beginnings of Brexit and why there was a referendum in the first place. So why did that occur? It's, as we will see, as I will read through the text, it occurs not just for, how could we say it, not just because some people within Britain wanted to leave the European Union, but also for political reasons that were connected to the status of the Conservative Party at that particular time. So prior to the referendum, as we'll see in the text, David Cameron was the leader of the Labour Party. He was the leader of the Conservative Party. Sorry, he was the Prime Minister at that particular time. Again, similar to what has just occurred now in the general election in Britain, there was another general election, and that time there was someone called Ed Miliband. Ed Miliband was the leader of the Labour Party. He went into an election, contested an election as the Labour Party leader against the Conservative Party, or against many other parties, but in particular the Conservative Party, who had David Cameron as the leader. As you will see in the text, but I will just tell you now, what was important was that David Cameron promised a referendum in his manifesto. So David Cameron promised a referendum on Europe in his party manifesto that was released prior to this election. What I will do is I will read this out, and then I will actually play you another video, a more amusing video, by which I will show you quickly now here. So this video, let's go to the beginning of it just so you can see. This video is on what we call daytime TV. So it occurred on daytime TV, ITV, which is channel 3 in Britain. It's not a public-owned TV channel, so it raises its money through commercials. But this occurred in, when did this occur? This occurred in June, 20th of June 2018, and so it's after the referendum. And I think that it summarizes actually quite well one of the arguments that one of the characters, so these are fictional characters in this novel, one of the kind of sentiment of the way that one of the characters, in particular Doug, feels about the referendum. Just before we'll look at Danny Dyer, who's a very famous Cockney, a very famous Londoner, talking about this, and he is rather kind of absurdly, if you will, on this daytime TV with Jeremy Corbyn, who was the leader of the Labour Party, and Pamela Anderson as well, who recently has become much more famous for her political opinions, actually. And I think is in a relationship with a football player from Marseille. I would actually recommend reading and listening to some of the things Pamela Anderson says recently about politics. They're very interesting. So yeah, very surreal rather video with Jeremy Corbyn, Pamela Anderson, and this famous Londoner Cockney called Danny Dyer. But before we get to this video, I will read through the. I might put this down for a second. I'm going to read through this so you can have it and hear it in English, and then there will be questions at the end of it. Because there are quite a fair few questions, I will first actually just read through. Okay, so written comprehension. So Doug, this is a note to let you know, understand. So Doug is a left-wing journalist and writer who mainly writes for The Guardian. So he's a fictional character, but he's a character who is depicted as a journalist, a left-wing journalist. He's also depicted as a socialist who writes for The Guardian. So we've seen The Guardian before as a newspaper. Nigel, the other character, is the son of one of Doug's old friends and works in David Cameron's cabinet. They meet on a regular basis to discuss political issues, and Nigel gives Doug some information about what is going on in Downing Street. So as you will see there, they have differing opinions. Doug is left-wing and Nigel is more right-wing as part of David Cameron, the Conservative at this time, Prime Minister. Okay, so it's supposed to be set in April 2015. So that's prior to the general election that occurs and prior to the referendum. So on the 14th of April 2015, the Conservative Party launched its manifesto for the forthcoming general election. Doug read through the first paragraph of David Cameron's introduction while waiting for Nigel to arrive at their usual meeting point, the cafe at Temple Tube station. So there's actually quite a famous small cafe there at the underground station, which I've also been to quite a few times. Okay, so this is, I'll start. 5 years ago, he read, Britain was on the brink. Since then, we have turned things around. So this is the speech of David Cameron. 5 years ago, he read, Britain was on the brink. Since then, we have turned things around. Britain is now one of the fastest growing economies in the world. We are getting our national finances back under control. We have halved our deficit as a share of our economy. More people are in work than ever before. Britain is back on its feet, strong and growing stronger every day. This has not happened by accident. It is the result of difficult decisions and of patiently working through our long-term economic plan. Above all, it is the product of a supreme national effort in which everyone has made sacrifices and everyone has played their part. Our friends and competitors overseas look at Britain and they see a country that is putting its own house in order, a country on the rise. They see a country that believes in itself. So, this is Doug. Did you write any of this rubbish? Doug asked, as Downing Street's perennially youthful Deputy Assistant Director of Communications arrived and sat opposite him. Nigel smiled with a frosty smile, but seemed neither surprised nor especially put out, gêné by this opening gambit. Ah, Douglas, he said, always on the attack, always trying to secure the first point. If I thought that you meant any of it, I'd be offended. But I've come to know you better than that after all these years. How's morale at number 10? Doug asked, passing Nigel the cappuccino he had already ordered for him. The panic is off the scale, I should think. The confidence, Douglas, the enthusiasm, that's what's off the scale. David Cameron's, Dave's ready for this fight, and do you know why? Because he's going to win. He hasn't been reading the opinion polls then. We never take any notice of opinion polls. They're always wrong. So opinion polls, des sondages. The television debate didn't go well too. Ed Miliband put up a really good show. Pretty good show. It's a nice guy, but we're not worried about him. The people of this country will never vote for a Marxist as Prime Minister. Where did you read he was a Marxist? Said Doug. The Daily Mail, another right-wing populist journal, newspaper. Ed Miliband isn't a Marxist. His father was, according to the Daily Mail. Oh, come on, Nigel, don't be silly. Having a father who was a Marxist doesn't make you a Marxist. Here, this is in reference to Ralph Miliband, who was a famous Marxist writer. Doug sighed. He had been meeting Nigel 2 or 3 times a year now for 5 years, and was still no closer, as far as he could tell, to breaking through his facade of cheerful obfuscation. Obfuscation means making things not clear. So, making things not clear. I should have known better, he said, than to think you'd do anything other than pretend everything was hunky-dory. That is your job, after all. Hunky-dory means que tout va bien, everything is good. I wouldn't say everything was hunky-dory, Doug. It's a bit complacent of you to think that. If I may say so. We still face a lot of challenges. Austerities still biting and mostly hurting the people who are least able to deal with it. Dave's aware of all this. He's not a monster, however you may like to think of him. But we're pretty good at reading the mood of the country, and it's obvious that when things are so difficult and the future is so uncertain, people would be mad to vote for change. Continuity, stability, that's what they need to get them through this sticky patch. Sticky patch meaning une période difficile, a difficult period. So sticky meaning collant, patch meaning en doigt, un petit bout, like une tache collante. Doug scratched his head. But that literally makes no sense under the current administration. The country is in a mess. So the solution is to vote for the current administration? In a nutshell, yes. That's the very clear message we're going to be putting across to the electorate in the next few weeks. Well, good luck with that. Doug sighed again. Okay. Let's get down to brass tacks. The nitty-gritty, Nigel agreed. So brass tacks and the nitty-gritty are idiomatic expressions for getting down to business. So an attempt to talk clearly and without metaphor. Exactly. The nitty-gritty. Page 72 of the manifesto. Real change in our relationship with the European Union. Nigel beamed happily. That's right, a crucial part of the manifesto. Almost its unique selling point, you might say. Well, whoever wrote this, I must give them credit. It's pretty clear. Only the Conservative Party will deliver real change and real choice on Europe in an in and out referendum by the end of 2017. That's right. Is that really such a good idea? It's Dave's idea, of course it's good. But supposing there's a referendum and we vote to leave, then we leave. The people have spoken. Impressed as he was by this unqualified commitment to direct democracy meaning the decision of the people, to the right of the people to make decision, so normally in referendums. Duck couldn't help objecting, but people don't really care about the European Union. Whenever the public are asked to list their main political concerns, they say things like education or housing, and the EU doesn't even come in the top 10. Nigel had been looking puzzled, but his face now cleared. Ah, you're talking about the public. Sorry, that's not what I meant by people. What did you mean by people? I meant people in the Conservative Party who keep banging on about how much they hate the EU and won't shut up until we do something about it. So this is a very crucial bit, I think, here. Those people. So that's why Cameron is promising this referendum, to silence those people. Don't be silly, Douglas. Holding a referendum on such an important issue, just to silence a few annoying people in his own party, that would be a highly irresponsible thing to do. But that's just what you said he was doing. No, I didn't. I said nothing of the sort. Sorry, there's a dog. No, I didn't. I said nothing of the sort. Have you read the manifesto? Of course I have. Well, it says here why we're promising a referendum. He picked up Doug's copy from the table, where it was still folded at the relevant page. Listen, it will be a fundamental principle of a future Conservative government that membership of the European Union depends on the consent of the British people. That's why, after the election, we will negotiate a new settlement for Britain in Europe and then ask the British people whether they want to stay in the European Union on this informed basis or leave. We will hold that in and out referendum before the end of 2017 and respect the outcome. Now, what could be more simple than that? Hold on a second, said Doug. You left a bit out. I did. Yes, give me that. You missed a bit. I don't think so. That sentence about the consent of the British people? Yes. Yes? Just after that. Here. He took the pamphlet back from Nigel and rapidly scanned the page. Yes, here we are. Membership of the European Union depends on the consent of the British people, and in recent years that consent has worn wafer thin. That's right, it has. So what Cameron's doing is extremely risky, in other words. Why do you say that? Because he's proposing to hold an in and out referendum, and he knows in advance that the majority is going to be wafer thin. Nigel shook his head and tutted. Wafer thin means que la majorité sera très peu. Wafer thin, so thin. Nigel shook his head and tutted. Honestly, Douglas, you writers, with your ridiculously creative interpretation of things, you take a pretty clear, perfectly innocent phrase and you twist it. You distort it. I suppose you could always make the result dependent on a supermajority, 60% or something like that. That idea was suggested, but there is no real need. Why not? Because the referendum will be purely advisory. Really? But that's not what it says here. It says we will hold that in and out referendum before the end of 2017 and respect the outcome. That doesn't sound like an advisory referendum to me. Of course it does. It means that the British people will give us their advice and we'll take it. Doug did not look particularly convinced by this argument, so Nigel added, in any case, would it be so bad if we left the European Union? As a socialist, you must have lots of problems with it. Look at the way they've been treating the poor Greeks, for instance. Finishing his cappuccino, Doug rose to his feet and put the manifesto pamphlet away in his coat pocket. That's true, he said, but I assume that Cameron wants to stay in. Of course. In which case, I think he will be taking an enormous gamble if he offers a 50-50 vote on something where he already thinks public opinion is closely divided. It is a gamble, Nigel agreed. A huge gamble. The country's future decided on the roll of a dice. The fact that Dave's prepared to take it is what makes him such a strong, decisive leader. Impressed as always by Nigel's logical contortions, Doug shook his hand and asked one final question. So, Cameron isn't worried about promising this referendum? Well, he would be, Nigel answered, buttoning up his coat. But the bottom line is, it's not going to happen. Why not? Said Doug. Because there's no way he's going to win an overall majority. All the opinion polls say so. Don't you look at them, Douglas? You really should. Thank you. I will now, sorry, there was some noise going on in the background there, but hopefully you heard me and you could obviously read it through a couple of times. I'm going to now put on this video. So let me myself down here. This video, as I mentioned before, I think in a way, explains very well some of the things being said in the in this book, in this extract from this book, and I put it on now. It only lasts 1 minute 37.
Who knows about Brexit?
Yeah, quite.
No one's got a fucking clue what Brexit is, yeah? You watch Question Time, it's comedy.
Were you no clearer when Jeremy Corbyn
No,
explained
I ain't got the
Labour's
clue. No
policy?
one knows what it is. It's like this mad riddle that no one knows what it is, right? So what's happened to that David Cameron who called it off? Let's be fair.
Oh.
I think you're referring to the former Prime Minister.
Yeah, but how comes he can scuttle off? He called all this on.
Yeah.
Yeah?
He
Called
has
it on.
no regrets.
Where is he? He's in Europe, in Nice, with his trotters up. Yeah? Where is the geezer? I think he should be held accountable for it. He should be held accountable for it.
It's a valid point. A lot of people do feel that all politicians on Brexit have basically conspired to be incompetent at best and downright reckless at worst. And the country is now heading towards a perilous cliff, and no one really knows what's going to happen when we fall off it.
Well, there's a government that's supposed to be negotiating and spends its time negotiating with itself.
Quite right.
That is the biggest problem.
Did you vote leave?
I voted to remain.
You did?
Yes.
Unequivocally?
Absolutely.
Is your heart really in
I
though?
went into the polling station, I put my...
But you've never really wanted to be in the European Union, have you?
I've had criticisms of it, and my whole point in the campaign was that I did have criticisms. I wanted reforms. I thought there was a danger of the thing becoming too free market orientated, and that's what I said during the referendum. But I did say we should remain in it. The vote went the other way.
There we go. So that's the video of Danny Dyer on the left using a very Cockney slang, saying that David Cameron has got his trotters up. That David Cameron has got his trotters up, which meaning that he's got his feet up like this in Nice on holiday. He called him a geezer. A geezer is a kind of slang for a person. It's like a Cockney slang for a person. So as you can see, that Danny Dyer's critique is that David Cameron called the referendum and arguably for internal political reasons, and those internal political reasons continuing, as you can hear Jeremy Corbyn saying that the government are supposed to be negotiating a trade, but all they are is negotiating with themselves, meaning that the political problems inside the Conservative Party are not only one of the reasons why the referendum was called, but continue to produce problems within the Conservative Party. Okay, so I think that was quite a good little video to look at. Also, again, interesting, Pamela Anderson there also being on the right. So there's a bit of vocabulary there. Okay, so here are the questions. Number 1, explain briefly where the action takes place and what happens in this excerpt. So, number 2, Doug and Nigel meet to talk about one important event. Which one? So, which event are they talking about? Okay, the event that's coming up. Okay, so not necessarily the event that occurs later, but the event that's coming up. Number 3, give elements to describe the personalities of both characters. So Doug on the left, Nigel on the right. So Doug being the journalist and Nigel working for David Cameron. Number 4, read from 1.4 to 1.46. What is the opinion of both characters on David Cameron and the Conservative Party's project? Illustrate your answers with examples. So Doug's opinion, Nigel's opinion. Doug, his argument, so the examples and Nigel's examples. Number 5, read from 1.48 to 1.77. What exactly is the main issue discussed by the two characters? B, explain the different meanings of the term people used by the characters. Why is the distinction important? So people is used by both Doug and Nigel and differently. And then there's one point in the text where Nigel discusses in particular a problem around the notion of people. Read from 1.78 to 109. Is Cameron's strategy described as a safe one by Doug? Why? So is Cameron's strategy safe? You can also refer to the video here about whether it was safe or not. 7. So yeah, 110 to the end of the extract. Can you identify contradictions in Nigel's arguments? So there are many contradictions actually in his arguments, arguably many contradictions also in the reason why, in what David Cameron wants as well. So B, what could it tell us about the character and the author's intentions? So here actually meaning the character of Nigel, and the author's intentions, that meaning the so the description, why Jonathan here, so why Jonathan, what does it show about Jonathan Coe? Okay, if that the description of Nigel being contradictory, do we think that the author is in agreement with Brexit or not? Okay, I'll stop it there before we move to the grammar section. Okay, there you go. Hello, now we're going to have a look at the grammar and translation, and the exercises at the end of the sheet. So with this, I'll read through them, but I'd like you to try and do this on your own at home. So, les phrases qui suivent sont au passé composé français. Traduisez-les en faisant le choix du prétérit ou du présent parfait, present perfect. 1. Je n'ai jamais vu la guerre des étoiles. Moi, je l'ai vue l'année dernière pendant les vacances d'été. 2. J'ai fini mes révisions. Mais tu as dit cela la semaine dernière. 3. La situation économique s'est améliorée après l'élection du nouveau président. Elle s'est récemment détériorée. 4. J'ai fait beaucoup de voile quand j'étais au lycée, mais c'est la première fois que je fais de la planche à voile. Si. Complétez les phrases qui suivent avec les verbes donnés entre parenthèses au present perfect simple ou à la forme be verb plus ing. Alors ça c'est le présent continu. So you for 2 hours, it's time you start. Now that the video game, you can take it back to the library. We, to give you a hand with the cooking. Look at the carpet, someone here with muddy feet. The news to get the latest casualty figures. It's strange. I think someone was all morning from the house opposite. So here also I'd like you to be able to put in, so compléter les phrases qui suivent avec for or since. I think this is good practice actually. Often mistakes are made here. So I haven't seen her Christmas. We haven't been to the concert, the holidays. Unemployment has been rising 2 months. Things are quiet here. Nothing has happened a long time. She's had a new job last Monday. And here I'd like you to try and translate these sentences. So, je ne suis pas allé à la piscine depuis qu'elle a rouvert. J'aime les escargots depuis que je n'ai mangé chez vous. Le maison est inondé depuis une semaine. So, flood, it's a flood. J'ai lu ce livre il y a 3 mois. Il y a 3 mois que je n'ai rien lu. Complétez les phrases qui suivent avec les verbes donnés en prétérit, present perfect or past perfect, form simple, form simple or form, so that's present continuous. When the telephone call with the news that she had been awarded the prize for her first novel, Laurie, the dining room walls and her hands full of yellow paint. 2. Can you make me a cup of tea, Joan? For hours and feel thirsty. Anything to drink since home this morning. In September 2015, the price of petrol for several months and weird. And many people to use public transportation instead of their cars. They asked to the restaurant twice before, but this was the first time they're home. Okay. Again, there is also an expression écrite down below that you could have a go at. I'm going to look over today's Sunday, so I'm going to look over the ones that have been sent to me and try and get them back to you for the end of the week. As I said, if you'd like to organise mini séance with me tomorrow between 4:30 and 7, I am here. If you could send me an email, that would be great. Okay, thank you very much, and I will do another one for these next week if we're not going back, and I hope it was okay. It's hopefully about the right length, maybe a bit long, but anyway, okay, thank you very much.